Good evening and welcome to Monday, October 29th, 2018 at 7 p.m. We are in the second floor Select Board meeting room at the Groton Town Hall. Our agenda today, we'll have announcements and reviewing this agenda for the public. Public comment period, followed by the Town Manager's report. On that report is the Select Board's agenda schedule. We will consider ratifying the Town Manager's appointments to the Highway Department Building Committee. We will consider ratifying the Town Manager's appointment of Michael McEachern as a senior water technician for the water department, and we'll have a discussion regarding the capital planning committee. At 7:15, we have an agenda item to discuss the accessibility issue concerning voting at the Groton Country Club. We'll follow by other business, and then on our ongoing issues, including perhaps the senior center building committee, proposed policy on major initiative planning, charter approval, implementation of new provisions, committee charge for capital planning committee, Route 119 sidewalk installation, the Florence Roche Elementary School feasibility study, task force to consider having a full-time 24/7 fire department, the library roof repair, highway garage renovations, Pepperell landfill or incorporate OPEB funding in the operational budget if required. Select Board liaison reports, and then the minutes of October 15th, 2018.
Actually, we do not have the minutes for October.
We do not have
We'll put
minutes
that for
tonight,
next week.
so we will delay those.
I
to
jumped the
next week.
gun and put it on the agenda.
That's
and
all
I should have
good.
spoken to the person who was responsible for it.
Yeah, would you get it together there?
Yes, I
Town
will.
Manager, thank you. All right, with no further ado, I will make one announcement regarding, and I know it's been out there a lot, but let's just make sure, regarding trick-or-treat hours. I'm told it's 6 to 8 p.m. on Halloween itself, Wednesday, so have fun out there and be safe, please. And beware little ghouls and ghosts and goblins, right? All right, any other announcements? Mr. Geiger.
Just a reminder to everybody out there that early voting is in progress here in this building and will continue until the Friday before the election.
This Friday.
And when you go to the polls, you're going to get two ballots. It's a little different, and you're going to check in and check out twice. But by doing it all at one time, we're saving money for the town.
Can I add on to that?
Yes, please.
Also, everyone should have received in the mail this booklet about information about the marijuana ballot question, which is a little bit, the question is a little bit hard to understand, and there's a lot of information in here, which hopefully will help you. And on Friday, the town hall hours are only 8 a.m. till 1 for voting. But Thursday evening of this week, they are open until 7 p.m. here at the town hall. And I also wanted to mention something else. There will be a Veterans Day ceremony, and it will be held on Sunday, which is Veterans Day this year, at 11 a.m., which is the traditional time for Veterans Day commemorations at the fire station. I also wondered, on our board, was anyone invited to speak at that?
I do not know if anybody was invited to speak at that.
Okay.
Would anybody like to speak up if they were invited to speak at that? Does not appear that we will be speaking at that.
I attended it last year, but I will be out of town this year. John is a veteran, I know, so you'll be there.
Okay, Allison Manoogian, please, thank you.
Just one other announcement, that our new fire truck has arrived. It is here in town. It is not yet up and running. They're doing some training and stuff, but it's a magnificent vehicle, and the crew is looking forward to having it as a new tool. So I encourage everyone to take a look at it, and if you're lucky, you might get a sticker or a hat.
I have one announcement. Last week, we talked about the movie Little Women,
Yes.
and the board asked what donation was made to the cemetery, the old cemetery, old burying ground committee. So I'm going to ask the selectmen tonight to accept on behalf of the old burying ground committee a gift of $2,500, which will be used to hopefully maintain the cemetery. So I'd ask the board tonight to vote to accept that gift on behalf of the old burying ground committee.
Right now?
Should we do that under other business tonight?
It's up to you, Barry, whenever you want to do it.
Yeah, we'll do that under other business tonight.
Okay.
Thank you for letting us know. All right, any other announcements? The public is, many members of the public are in attendance. Anybody like to say anything tonight? I have Marlena Gilbert, yes. Do you have the microphone?
Some things never change.
Or you can stand at the seat and you can speak right into the
You
microphone.
can sit at the seat.
I just wanted to give you a school update. I don't know if you want me to do it real quick now, or I saw liaison updates down below, so.
Yeah, we can do it now.
Okay. So, we had a couple school committee meetings since the last time I've been here. Sorry, I apologize, I was sick, could not make it. We had our evaluations in regards to progress and performance. That information is on our website, and it will be in our newsletter, which will be shared with all our peer board members as well. A bit of more of a summary. More importantly, we're starting in regards to our budget. I know the town manager is meeting administration on October 31st. One thing that we are looking at, we're continuing with the audit recommendations and looking at everything. We did have food service director come in and provide us with a business plan in which we could try and continue with in-house food service. School committee did not feel that what was presented was extensive enough in regards to the ability to increase participation and therefore increase revenue. She's going to come back with more recommendations from suggestions that came from that meeting. Running parallel, we will run the same course in which we did when we looked into all possibilities with outsourcing as the recommendations. So we will be also running an RFP on the other side, so we will have that information data, reviewing it at the same time as when we come back with a further in-depth business plan. And that process will play out through the next couple of months.
All right, well, thank you. Appreciate the information regarding the school district. Okay, seeing nothing further, why don't we proceed with the town manager's report, please?
Mr. Chairman, based on applications received from interested residents willing to serve on the Highway Department Building Committee, I've appointed Val Press, David Manugian, Peter Mayette, John Amaral, and John Geiger to the committee. I'd ask the board to ratify those appointments this evening.
Would anybody who is requested to be on that committee like to speak? I know it's Val's in the audience, but I appreciate you coming to, thank you.
I have a question.
Yes, Becky.
I've made an assumption and I realized that I don't know that it's correct. Was David Manugian a representative of the FinCom?
No, I'm putting him on as his experience as a highway DPW director.
Uh-huh.
So he serves as a DPW director in Bedford, and having somebody with another town's experience on board, I think would be fantastic. It's a plus, though, having him as a member of the FinCom as well.
Okay.
So it's a twofer.
Great,
But I mainly want his public works experience.
all the better.
Any other questions, comments? Okay, I'll take a motion, please, on this.
I move that we ratify the town manager's appointments to the Highway Department Building Committee. Val Prest, David Manugian, Peter Mayette, John Amaral, and John Geiger.
It's been moved. Mr. Geiger, would you like us to make a second motion?
I
No,
see.
let's just abstain.
Okay, so
We're
Mr.
gonna
Geiger's
have a
gonna stay.
problem because I need to abstain as well.
Well,
Because you're
let's do it this way. No, let's do it this way. Why don't we
them
have the first
individual.
motion of Val Press, David Manugian,
Yeah,
Val
we
Press,
can do
Peter
it,
Mayette,
yes.
and John Amaral.
Well, no, we can do it this way, because we can have it done 3 and 1 abstention on both votes. So if you'll bear with me,
Okay.
if someone will please give me a motion for Val Prest, Peter Mayette, John Amaral, and John Geiger, I'd like to take that first.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Abstain?
Abstain.
Abstain. And now that passed 3 to positive 1 abstention. And then if I could have a motion for Dave Manugian, that would probably also allow us to pass.
I'll move that one also.
And I will second that one. All those in favor?
Aye.
And any abstentions?
Aye.
1 abstention. So that also did 3 in favor, 1 abstention.
Thank you, Barry.
Yes.
And I guess I should follow up, since I asked about if David was representing the Finance Committee. John Geiger, as a representative of our board,
I thought it was important to have John on the committee
Someone
as a
on-
member of your board, yes.
yeah, okay, thank you.
We have a vacancy for a senior water technician for the water department. After a search, Tom Orcutt has requested that I appoint Michael McEachern of Townsend for the position. Michael is here tonight. You have a copy of his resume in your packet. You can see he's been working for the Townsend Water Department for many, many years. He comes with great experience. We're very excited to bring him on board. He comes highly recommended. He's here to answer any questions, as is Tom, so I'll leave it up to the board if you have questions. If not, I would ask the board to consider ratifying that appointment this evening, effective tomorrow.
Any questions from members of the board? Pardon me.
Do we want to explain how we have a vacancy?
Yeah, so as you know, last year, the water department, in putting together their operating budget, received notification that a longtime water technician for the water department, George Brackett, was planning on retiring in June of 2019. He still is. So the water department wanted to bring a technician on board to train under George and Steve, so that when George retired, he'd be able to hit the ground running. We thought it was a good idea. We put it in the operating budget. We hired an individual to perform that work. He started, he worked for 6 months, 8 months? 6 months, and got a better job offer, so he left. So we still want to continue with the training, so that when George retires, Tommy's ready to go with 2 very qualified technicians. So that's why Michael's here. He'll have 8 months working with George, which isn't optimum, but we're very happy. But I think somebody with Mike's experience, he'll pick it up quick. Yep.
Should work fine.
Thank you.
Anything else further from the board? Michael, if you can grab a microphone, if you'd like to say anything. I mean, you don't have to, just giving you an opportunity.
I'm looking forward to working for the Groton team, and I've heard nothing but good things about Tom, and I know Stephen a little bit from high school.
Excellent.
I met George years ago at classes and stuff like that have to do with our continuing education courses.
Great. Well, we thank you for bringing some of your 2 decades of experience to Groton. Appreciate that. All right. With no further ado, I'll take a motion, please.
I'll make a motion that we ratify the town manager's appointment of Michael, I need the last name again,
McEachern.
McEachern.
Apologize for that.
Believe me, as Manugian, I get it. As the senior water technician for the water department, effective tomorrow.
It's been moved
Second.
and seconded. Any further discussion? Anything from the public? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition, abstentions? Heard that unanimous.
Welcome, Michael.
Thank you very
Welcome,
much.
Michael, thank you.
Good luck.
So, Mr. Chairman, it's 7:15, and the last item on the town manager's report is probably going to take more than a couple of minutes of discussion time, and the town clerk is here. So I'd ask him to come up to the table to talk about the next item on the agenda. We received an email from Pat Finlay Hamilton from Graniteville Road, who had a concern with accessible voting at the country club. And this is not the first time the board has heard it, but given the situation, that is what we have for voting. So we wanted to put it on the agenda tonight and discuss it with the board, and we start having that conversation. Obviously, on November 6th, precincts 2 and 3 are gonna be voting at the country club, and precinct 1 is gonna be voting here at Town Hall. Michael and I met this morning and this afternoon, and one of the things that we talked about is, does it make sense in the future, once the senior center is constructed, to put 2 precincts at the senior center and keep 1 precinct here at the town hall and eliminate the country club? The town hall has full accessibility, and it's been working fine for early voting, and it worked fine for the town election in May, and hopefully it'll work fine for precinct 1 on November 6th. But our thought is maybe we can use the new senior center for 2 precincts. So I put in the packet, we have it up on the screen here, the layout of the new senior center, which will be done hopefully in July. Knock on wood that it will be done in July. Yeah, thank you, John. So within the senior center, you see up here on the screen, you have the community room, which is 50 by 30. And you also have a 50 by 30 lobby area, which is wide open, which can accommodate 2 precincts. Parking, there are about 70 spaces in the parking lot. But as you know, at town meeting, one of the things that the town meeting approved was to take the property next to it for overflow parking. So eventually, this area here will become a parking area in the future once we get the conservation restriction to allow it for parking. So it does have the ability to address the handicap situation, since the new senior center will be fully handicap accessible, on one floor. And it will, hopefully, if we can put 2 precincts there and 1 precinct here at the town hall, it could address the concerns of the country club. Michael?
Well, I agree with the analysis. We are stuck for buildings. The country club is what we have today. This solution, each of those rooms at 30 by 50, feet, is about almost twice, not quite twice, the first floor meeting room. So I think they would be adequate for 1 precinct each. So we get 2 precincts in that building. The parking would be a little tight for 2 precincts, but if you build that overflow parking, we should be in good shape. The country club has 90 parking spots, tight parking spots. These, I presume, will be a little better, so I think that parking should work out. I think that's probably the best solution.
So, Mike, can I ask you a question? What does precinct location, what jurisdiction does that fall under? Does that fall under the town clerk's office? Is that a hybrid situation between the Board of Selectmen and the town clerk? Let's get some jurisdictional realities here.
I believe the select board determines the precinct locations.
Okay, so thank you.
You mean the voting location?
The voting locations, yeah.
Excuse, thank you.
Yeah, no, that's okay.
Polling location.
Thank you, yeah. Yeah, Allison?
I'm just wondering, and without a map, it's gonna be a tricky discussion, but roughly where are the precinct boundaries that would be heading to the senior center if we made this move?
Well, we haven't talked about which precincts would vote there. My inclination would be precinct 3 and precinct 1 to go to the senior center. The boundaries are weird for that. The boundaries for precinct 1, the boundary is right along Route 119, the south side of 119. That's all precinct 1.
Okay.
Precinct 3 is, Hollis Street,
Precinct 3 is me.
Okay.
north.
And
Right. So now precinct 3 travels to the country club. This would be a little further, but that same kind of commute.
Are there traffic concerns or entry and exit concerns from the senior center onto West Main Street?
Well, we've used, I don't think so. We've used it for 1 precinct for a long time, and we've never had any issues. I mean, it's something we should definitely
We can
consider
always
looking
station
at.
a police officer out on 225 if necessary.
Certainly less traffic on 225 down there than there is on
119.
119 right here.
Except during the commute hours, then it kicks
Yeah.
up a little bit, so we may need to put
Yeah.
an officer down there during the commute hours.
Yeah. Becky?
are you saying that we would need that additional parking in order to do this?
I think we would. For bigger elections like the presidential election in 2020,
Yeah.
we're gonna be, 70 parking spots will be very tight. We'll have people waiting to park, I think.
So, the place where we have plenty of parking and plenty of space is the school complex. I understand the reasoning that took the polling places out of the schools was because of safety concerns. But if we didn't have those, that would be the obvious location, right?
Great facility to use. The commute, however, for precinct 2 is to the other end of town, similar to what we're talking about precinct 3 to the other end of town. That's the only kind of drawback, but the middle school's worked out terrific for a polling location, 2 precincts.
Yeah. John?
I guess I got 3 things. One, Allison and I were both on the school committee when the decision was made not to bring the voting into the school. And it was after, there was one incident in Malden where somebody got their foot on the accelerator right outside the school and the car went bashing into a wall and a bollard and there were kids around. And there are other incidents like that. And a lot of towns have removed voting from the schools or shutting the school down on election day. So I think the way we're doing it is the most appropriate way, given the world we live in right now. Next question I have is, I just saw this message from Ms. Finley Hamilton today. has anybody from Town Hall responded to her email?
Oh,
of
absolutely.
September 6th?
Oh, I did as soon as we
Okay, I
received
just
it.
haven't seen anything.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. I did respond to her, and as a matter of fact, we invited her to the meeting tonight.
Okay,
Unfortunately,
great.
she's out of town. But we
Great.
told her we were gonna have the meeting, and I would follow up with her.
Super. The last question I have is there anything more we can do temporarily for November 6th to assist people with disabilities getting in and out of the country club?
Michael?
I would encourage people to early vote, use early voting, which is happening this week.
Okay?
In terms of the physical facility, you know, Ms. Finlay's memo was a little incorrect, I think, in that there is some handicap parking, there is a handicap entrance, and there are signs pointing to it. But obviously, if people are missing it, it's not the most effective. I would just encourage people, if you have difficulty, you know, with the stairs, the long walk, come to Town Hall and early vote.
Maybe we could put a sign at the foot of the hill, maybe near where your sign is that says no closer than 150 feet or whatever that is,
Yeah.
that has an arrow and it says handicap parking and handicap
Yeah.
entrance, and it points up the road.
There used to be one there. Oh, we'll have to double check.
Okay, but I think that would be a good step.
Yeah.
Okay, that's all I have.
The individual, sorry, back one moment. The individual did ask the idea about somebody's residences, and I know that many years ago when I was growing up and going to the polls with my parents, there was a lot of spread out polling locations, and people did have them at their houses occasionally. But I don't think we have the kind of parking issues that we have when you need to take a whole precinct and put them into one location. I certainly couldn't see that being possible at someone's residence. But along those lines, you know, what are the restrictions, just so we can vote, you know, in full comment, are there any restrictions on public-private residence? Can it be a owned facility by somebody else who just happens to donate it to election day? Are there any other restrictions?
It needs to be accessible and publicly accessible, and of course, the size. The town did have a polling location committee,
Yeah,
I think it was 2014,
yeah,
where we looked at Groton Wood Camp, we looked at the Baptist Church up here, we looked at Legion Hall, we looked at Lost Lake Fire Station, we looked at the Center Fire Station, and the Country Club. I think I got them all, but, you know, and the conclusion was the Country Club was, you know, was the best. I mean, it has some, you know, it's not perfect, but it was the best location. Each of those other facilities, and Legion Hall was also in there, each of those other facilities had, you know, kind of a problem,
right,
bigger than the Country
Handicap
Club.
access or parking.
right. It seems like there's a
Those
trifecta
are- yeah.
of location, of size of the venue, parking, and handicap access, and
Right.
you need to satisfy all three to be good. Becky, yes, thank you for your patience.
So a couple of other ideas that occurred to me. You mentioned the Lost Lake Fire Station. Would it be possible to put precinct 2 there?
Well, the issue with the Lost Lake Fire Station was there's 17 parking spots, 17. And 6 to 8 of those are gonna be for election workers,
Right,
and so the rest of those for voters. Not nearly enough on especially in a busy election.
right.
Compounded with, it's a fire station. So if there's a fire on election day, we have firefighters parking in and out with the trucks and voters mixed together.
Well, but the fire trucks could be moved for that day?
If the fires don't care if it's election day.
No, but I mean, the equipment can be at the other fire station for that day.
I
We
don't know,
don't, well,
I don't necessarily want the board to be dictating fire policy.
no,
From
I'm
election
just saying, I
day.
think that there might be solutions for that. A couple of
So,
other,
well, I'll just reiterate that if you did, you know, remove the fire equipment out of that, there's only 17 parking spots.
right,
Not nearly enough.
right. Prescott, I know we did use, and people were unhappy with it. However, we've made a number of improvements to handicapped entrances in that building from the rear. So that is another option we could consider.
Well, it worked fine as a polling location, except people didn't like it. So,
Oh,
The
they
major
didn't
problem
like,
was pulling out on Main Street, that was the biggest complaint, I
and
believe.
parking was the
And
other
parking,
complaint.
yeah.
but I think that with some, well, I'll back up and say, some people are not gonna like whatever is done. So, at this point, we have plenty of time to think about all of the options. And whatever we decide, we're gonna have to educate people. If Prescott is used as a polling location, part of the education is that people need to understand to go around to the back, to park, and enter from the back, that you don't go in those front stairs that are very difficult. And then, going back to Barry's question about, can it be private property? The inn has a lovely function room at the back, right next to the parking lot, ground level, easy access, lots of parking, if they were willing to offer that to the town.
That'd be a generous offer. The only thing I would sort of ask, if something like that did occur, that it be a, like, sort of a permanent offer, because to change a polling location is
Right.
a process in itself.
Right, but
You
it
can
is
have a
something,
cocktail right after or before you vote, to make it very interesting.
but it could be, I mean, I think it's worth exploring that with them. Is that something that they might consider as a gift to the town? You know, Tuesdays are generally not big days for weddings, things
Well,
that are filling them up.
if I interrupt, I also would need it, Monday, late afternoon,
Yeah.
so we can set up.
Right. And then some of the other facilities that are new in town that we might start thinking about, Indian Hill is gonna have a lot of, space, fully accessible public spaces. And I haven't been in the Hindu temple, but we're all gonna have that opportunity this weekend at their open house. I don't know whether that's another possibility.
So, John, please go ahead, yeah.
No, let me just throw out a consideration, it would, relative to the Groton Inn. Polls are open 8 to 8.
7 AM to 8 PM.
7 AM to 8 PM. And they're about ready to launch the restaurant. So there definitely could be some parking constraints as you get into the early evening hours with people going to the restaurant. Just put it on the list of things to check out, that's, if you talk with them.
Right, and as I'm thinking about it, the other place we could consider asking such a similar request would be the Gibbet Hill Barn, the function hall, that is perhaps not often used on a Tuesday and a Monday.
I think parking would be an issue there.
Caveat that it's great for us to conjecture to what private places might be available, but those are private places and they are entitled to run their business should they decide to. Certainly, we have a lot of places in town that volunteer quite a bit, and I wouldn't hate to impose upon them or think that it's expected that they do so.
Right,
Who's in charge of, if we have an idea, how do we run it down?
The town clerk and I would work together to run it down, but what I would suggest to the board tonight is, we got time.
You got
After
till
November
July,
6th.
right?
After November 6th, you're gonna have to use a country club on November 6th, and you're gonna have to use a country club next May for the town election.
Yeah.
And then you don't have another election until the primary for president in February of 2020. So you have 8 more months after that. The senior center will be open at that point. We can investigate some of these other ideas that Becky brought up. We wanted to put it on the agenda now for you to start thinking about it, so I'm glad we did. I'm glad we had this conversation. Once the senior center opens, it may not work. Maybe the lobby isn't conducive to having an election, but we just wanted to put it out on the table for the board to start thinking about it.
And I think you've heard that the board wishes to be quite open-minded in the ideas and potentials.
Absolutely.
And certainly we're not against approaching,
Understood.
and seeing what's out there or accepting volunteer, ideas from the community at large.
Okay.
And I know we had a couple from the public. Do you have anything new to add, Becky?
I just want to make it clear that we have parking issues everywhere, including the senior center, and I don't want us to say, yeah, let's decide to have voting at the senior center, and then that means automatically we're in for a pre-construction of a parking lot.
Well, the parking lot expansion in that area wouldn't be a paved lot because of the conservation restriction there. And so it would be for overflow parking at the facility. So it's part of the design and the construction of the senior center. So we would not be spending extra money to create, well, we would be spending money, but it wouldn't be an additional appropriation. I hope that makes sense.
It's included in the original specs
Thank
to
you.
have that lot.
That's what I was trying to say.
It's not included in the original bid, is it?
It is part of we did ask for a quote, and it would be a change order, so if there's sufficient money left over, it would be taken at that time. But it's part of the appropriation that we put into the senior center. We're not talking $1 million parking lot.
Okay, Judy, I apologize, thank you for your patience.
My comments concerning signage at the country club. At the moment, there are small rectangular signs that say handicap parking and point beyond the club. Maybe on election day, we could have a large sign on the way in before you get to where the people stand, saying handicapped parking beyond the country club or something like that. And then another one right at the bottom of the hill saying, again, but large signs, because it's the majority of our handicap, not all of them, but the majority of them are elderly. And once they get to where it's confusing, they aren't going to notice the signage as much. They're going to be concerned about people and about parking.
Thank you, that's good input. Marlene and then Ms. Allen.
I just wanted to make it abundantly clear that I agree with John that voting at the schools would be a very bad idea. We just tried to separate our busing from our parents of the drop-off and the pickup. And if you all want to answer all those phone calls that we've gotten, which were hundreds, have at it. But I just absolutely would not be in favor of that.
Thank you. Would you pass the microphone to Ellen, please? Thank you.
The country club has a hill from the handicap parking to get in without railings. Is there a possibility of getting a golf cart, people for the golf cart doing something to help people with golf carts?
I don't know. We'd have to check legality of that.
Take it on the liability of transporting people. When you rent a cart, you sign up.
We will look into it. We'll validate that.
But there is a hill from the handicap
Yes.
parking. There's a hill, and there's no railings.
Yeah.
Just to let you know.
Thank you,
I think we've heard loud and clear that, and I hope people have heard loud and clear that we will investigate other alternatives than that country club. This is kind of more than once, and clearly it's causing some issues for people. And
Sure
let's
does.
make sure that we have free and clear access to our elections. Is there anything further for the town clerk, other than our thanks for running a wonderful pre-election period with
He's
two
been having a lot
ballots?
of fun. You can't see the stress on his face.
Again, I would encourage, especially if you have some issues with the country club, to come out and early vote. It's the easiest way
Yeah.
to do it. We have 1,000 people who have early voted so far.
Right,
That's a lot for Groton.
that's great.
Yeah.
And I want to add my thanks for getting the staffing to handle all of that, because I think it's a real benefit to be able to vote in the evening like I did.
Thank you, Michael.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay.
Appreciate that.
Thank you.
All right, back to item number 4.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I'll be brief. I sent the Finance Committee and the Select Board a memo asking you to reconsider the necessity of creating the committee, or at least at a minimum delaying its establishment. My reasons are, the stated purpose of the committee is to assist the Select Board, Finance Committee, and Town Manager in long-range planning for building projects. There was a capital budget committee previously. It was abolished with the adoption of the charter and removed from the town bylaws. Section 6.6 of the revised Groton Charter states that the town manager shall submit a capital improvement plan to the Select Board and Finance Committee. The plan shall include all the pieces that we have. For the last 10 years, Pursuant to the charter, the department heads and I have developed a very good capital plan to replace the town's equipment and plan for major building expenditures. The plan is funded each year through the Capital Stabilization Fund, free cash, or bonds. The plan is reviewed each year by the Select Board and the Finance Committee and ultimately funded by town meeting. The department heads play a very important role in the establishment of the plan. They know the equipment. I have confidence in their ability to continue to do that. And I think the Finance Committee and the Select Board do a nice job reviewing the plan. In the past 5 years, the town has approved funding for a fire station and senior center. They were part of the 5-year capital plan and approved accordingly. Building committees were established for each of the projects. Expertise related to the buildings was sought out and put on the committee, and you can see the building committee that we put for the highway garage tonight follows along those lines. And I think the committee, did a good job assisting the town manager in overseeing the project from design, construction to oversight. And then I've given you a brief summary of the status of our current buildings. Town Hall was renovated in 1999. The building is maintained, and the capital plan established by a DPW director has been implemented. We recently updated and repaired the slate roof. We installed a new HVAC system. We annually maintain the boiler, and we've been repointing the building as needed. The police station was constructed in 1989. It's undergone various improvements and renovations over the last 4 years, including new roof and siding, repairs to the HVAC system, and interior improvements as well, including the electrical system. We just repaved the parking lot last year, and we've appropriated close to we will be appropriating $180,000 to update the dispatch center. Center Fire Station, of course, was constructed in 2014. It's in great shape, and it's well maintained by our fire department. The West Groton Fire Station, the Lost Lake Fire Station was constructed in 2004. It's in excellent shape, and again, is maintained by our DPW and our fire department. West Groton Fire Station is currently unoccupied and scheduled for some sort of disposition. It's no longer needed by our fire department, and you saw the plan that came out from the firefighters. Senior Center, obviously, is currently under construction. The Groton Public Library was renovated in 1999. It's undergone several repairs in the last few years. Interior improvements for space needs have been addressed. Improvements to the exterior retaining walls and walkways have been completed in the last 2 years. The parking lot is slated to be repaved, and lights in the lot are scheduled to be replaced in the next 2 years. A building envelope study was conducted last year, leading to the recommendation to replace the roof. An architect has been hired, and town meeting approved funding for the design and to put the project out to bid. They make all the decisions. I think the most important piece here is that the library trustees control that building, and they make all decisions relative to the library. So my comment there is I'm not sure what a capital planning committee would do there. Legion Hall, the highway garage obviously was constructed in 1989, and the facility is in desperate need of improvements. Town meeting has appropriated funding for the design. A building committee hopefully was appointed tonight, which it was, to assist the town manager in implementation of the project. Legion Hall is maintained by the DPW. It underwent a renovation of the first floor in 2012, and the floor collapsed. There was a heating system was updated at that time as well. We put radiant heating in the flooring, and there's a cement concrete floor in there now. So the building is in relatively good shape. The fairgrounds is leased and maintained by a third party. There are no town funds used to maintain those facilities. The Williams Barn is overseen by the Conservation Commission. It was the foundation was recently repaired, and I think the building is in pretty good shape. The fields are maintained by our Park Commission, our Highway Department, and the improvements not paid for by the town are funded either through CPA funds or the Capital Stabilization Fund, as well as user groups. Prescott School needs to be addressed separately, in my opinion. Currently, that building is leased to the Friends of Prescott, who cover all the utility expenses. The town pays the insurance and maintains the exterior. The Friends have successfully secured CPA grants to make various improvements to the building, and the board is considering appointing a Prescott Development Committee to help determine the future of the building. I think a capital planning committee would be redundant in the review of that. The Regional School Committee is currently reviewing the future of the Florence Roach Elementary School. Any decision made by the school committee will need to be approved by the Groton Select Board, since we own the building relative to Florence Roach. Allison and I sit on the committee overseeing that particular project. If they abandon the building, the town will have limited options with the building, since it sits on the school complex. So we'd have to, I'm not exactly sure what needs to be done, what would be done there. And the decision would need to be made by the Select Board in conjunction with the school committee. So I guess what I'm saying is I understand the thought process. I drafted the bylaw, as a matter of fact, for this committee. But in giving it thought and looking at our buildings and everything else, I'm just not sure what role it would play, so I just wanted to put it on. If the board still wants to move forward with it, no problem, I just thought I'd offer a different perspective, so that's all I have to say.
Allison?
So
Allison, do you have a question?
No, Allison has a list here, so.
Barry's seen me kind of typing questions and responses as I listened and reviewed things. I think that I feel that a capital planning committee is important at this point, whether it needs to be something that we have, forever into the future, or whether it's something that we convene for 2 or 3 years, could probably be figured out. I think that the perception around this issue is probably more important than the reality of how effectively things are done currently, and that's of concern. Some of the questions that I have around the capital planning process that I would look to a committee such as this to help resolve would be kind of a clearer understanding of what's capital and what's covered in operating. Ultimately, all kinds of projects can be sliced and diced in various ways and made to fit in different buckets, but if we had some real clear protocols, that would be helpful. Some of those protocols that I would look for would be around technology and potentially vehicle replacement processes and understanding how that's taken care of. We had a couple examples at this recent town meeting on how to handle items that either aren't really on the capital plan or are still tremendously in flux in terms of dollar amount. I think it would be helpful to have some understanding of that, whether we have a requirement that the only items that can be granted free cash potentially are on the capital plan, or again, to understand what the protocols would be. I think we need to have a lot of conversations around free cash, both in terms of guidelines and timeframes, to make sure that we're allocating that extra money appropriately between the town and school district needs, and in general, how do we incorporate and account for the district needs, since their capital needs are typically going to be met by an assessment to us as a member community. I think that the capital planning committee would be helpful in looking at requirements and protocols for spring and fall town meetings, and setting expectations for what would be happening when. And then I would think that the group could also potentially assist with reviewing grant opportunities or other funding that might be available for projects such as Prescott. So those are kind of my bulleted list here.
Observation, that sounds like an advisory committee rather than a planning committee. Sounds like there's a lot of things in there that are ideas, policy, guidance, adjustments to the way we do things, decision making on things. So,
and to me, that would be part of what would determine whether this is a 2 or 3 year committee or a decades into the future type committee.
Okay, Becky, yeah.
So what actually had been proposed was a capital planning advisory committee.
Mm-hmm.
Just to answer that last question you raised, I'm also very much in favor of having such a committee, for many of the same reasons Allison mentioned, but also I think philosophically, how we run government in this town. I think that the taxpayers and the residents very much want our town manager to be running the day-to-day operations of the town. But I think that citizen involvement in the decision-making around very large capital expenses is also what the townspeople want, certainly what I want, a lot of citizen involvement in that. Salaries are the main driver of our annual budget, but capital expenses have a huge impact on our taxes. And I think that we will make better decisions with more people involved in the decision-making process about how and when we're going to spend money on capital improvements. And by that I mean the construction of large buildings, the maintenance of large buildings, not the ongoing maintenance, but the renovation, periodic need for upgrading. And all of our real estate holdings, and including fields and sports facilities and parking facilities. I do think there are questions about whether to include technology, infrastructure, trucks and vehicles, where do you draw the line? But I do think that we need citizen involvement and board involvement in those decisions.
John?
I'm still struggling because I don't understand what the word capital means within the business, the government of Groton. And it's very hard for me to say we need it or we don't need it when I don't really understand fundamentally what we consider capital. In listening to the comments that have been made, and they're all really good ones, I have this feeling that we're really struggling because we put a name on something before we'd really figured out what we wanted it to do.
Mm-hmm.
And it got the name capital planning. And to some of us who have been involved in finances and so forth, capital planning has a very specific task that doesn't necessarily include many of the things that we need to get done that both Allison and Becky mentioned. So maybe what we need to think about is, and not go into a yes or no at this point, is to get a consolidated list of these things that we think need to be addressed. Forget the name, we won't name it yet, we'll just get the tasks identified and work from there into how do we organize it, how do we organize to get that done. I mean, I can see another path. I don't know that it would be the right path, but once we have a capital definition, right now, Mark's annual budget goes out 5 years on the capital. But there's not much information there about what those capital items are. And if we're really going to do capital planning, we need to look out further than 5 years. We need to be at least out there into the 10-year area and possibly even further. So say we went to 10 years and the 5-year part of the projection looks like the current one. But then just for the capital, you add another 5 years on it that talks about the capital without recalculating all the operational expenses that you're expecting there. Because I think a major part of the notion of a capital planning organization is to either find money or get money from the stock market and elsewhere for the needs of the organization. You know, we can't do that, but for the needs of the organization. So yes, look for grants because we're going to need them in this window and so forth. So I'm still very flexible about what we should do, and I'm concerned that we're not clear enough ourselves and collectively on what it is we want this to achieve. Mm-hmm. I agree with all the points you made too.
Yeah, so if I'll maybe allowed to chime in now. I'm concerned that if we keep looking out only 5 years, and I'm not saying that that's what we're doing, but that's all that's documented, we don't have the ability to think about items such as how do we sock away into a trust fund a certain amount of money so over 35, 40 years that eventually that money spends off enough money to take care of our capital plans. And we therefore are no longer burdening the taxpayer with our capital needs because we've done similar to what the OPED trust allows us to do over the 25, 30 years. If these buildings are 25, 30-year buildings, then the time to start prepping for that now at a small trickle of, I'm not gonna say it's small, it's not insignificant, but it's a trickle compared to that $10, $15 million hit that's needed when we have to renovate or replace a building, not renovate a building. It's much cheaper. It'd be nice to have somebody have some type of situation, whether that's a consultant or that's a committee, and usually in the town we can't afford consultants, so we go to committees of people who are intelligent in these areas and are able to think out that far and understand and take assessments and use guidance given them by the town employees and tours and other things, a lot of the knowledge, and build out that future plan. I'd love to understand and not have CPA grants that we allow and co-sponsor for Prescott School be done in such a vacuum, such that I'd like to understand if there's other buildings that might benefit from said grants, and can we possibly you know, should we make a priority call on which building should get certain grants and which building should not? I'd like to understand what the definition of a big spend item is that deserves the attention of this type of committee, that's not golf carts and stuff that's regularly in, you know, not a police cruiser that gets replaced every 3 years, right? You know, whether that's a 500, and I have a recommendation, is that a $500,000 number, is that a $3 million number? You know, what is that number? Technology would be another area, you know, what are the technology replacement issues we have to worry about? Sometimes just identifying the future can help us understand, oh good, we're set, we don't need to worry about this anymore, right? This now becomes a tactical matter of replenishment. So I certainly think that I think there's a lot of questions, and I concur with John, and I appreciate you saying it before I did, that I don't know that the name is doing us any favors, and I think we need to, I agree with the process, and I see a lot of nodding heads that perhaps the process is to compile a list of the things that we've stated here collectively, and we're missing a member, so we should also get that input of what are the types of things you'd like to see a collection of advisors do with regards to large, long-term expenditures for the town. And I'm going to leave it that vague because I think that it should be that vague. And then we can slice and dice. What are those operational issues that clearly, according to the charter, fall in the purview? And what are those issues where we could all benefit from having that advisement society that gets us make a decision, put $100,000 away for the next 20 years, and then have no more capital problems, or don't, and here's your challenges down the road. So I would love to see us in the place where we are able to use our non-excluded debt to pay for these issues, right? And be within that doesn't look possible right now given the budget, but you know, these are the types of things. So does anybody else have any comments or objections to anything said here? Sounds like we're in kind of vehement agreement on others, some diverse slants of that.
I think we are in agreement. There was one thing that I've been curious about, and John, you served on the charter review committee. Was there discussion in that committee about, since, as Mark has pointed out, the charter does ask the town manager to present a capital plan. Was there a discussion about having a committee, or leaving that all essentially solely in the town manager's hands?
I don't recall that any specific recommendation came in from anybody relative to capital. There was a lot of focus on getting the finance committee squared away and into that. But that's my recollection. I know our charter isn't here yet, but we started working on it better than 2 years ago. So
it's hard to remember.
The wording that I put in my memo was from the revised charter.
Yeah.
Right, and I accept responsibility. I know that citizens were asked to give suggestions to that committee, and it didn't occur to me at that point, but I have frequently wondered why we used to have a capital planning committee in this town, and then we stopped having it and just sort of turned that over to the town manager, which I don't think is it's not a wise decision for us as an organization.
It wouldn't surprise me if I'd like to go and check, but I'll state this subject to verification. It wouldn't surprise me if what it says in the 2010 charter about capital planning is identical to what it says in the new one.
It is.
So there weren't any changes made.
I don't believe so, sitting here.
Thank you.
Val Press, thank you.
All right, I was just wondering, you have a finance committee, I was just wondering how this could interface with what their efforts have been and are. Because you've already indicated a realm of things that you want to cover. And I just thought maybe that's a source for help right there.
Yeah, so especially as we go into the new charter, and that's a great idea, especially as we go into the new charter, the finance committee actually has a very specified and specific purpose. And some of that's legal according to Mass General laws, and some of that was very widely debated and highly debated as the new charter was being formed. If I may, you know, not speaking for them and perhaps putting on a former finance committee member hat too strongly, a lot of that role during 5 months of the year ends up being very tactical on the existing day budget and looking forward a couple years and figuring out what to do. And then there's some part of that, you know, which is involved guidance and other things. But the finance committee has always taken themselves as a non-policy making body. And many of these items would perhaps lead to policy decisions. That hasn't prevented the finance committee from recommending policy ideas to the board to consider, but they tend to view their role as far more advisory on the budget specifically that goes to town meeting every year with some other financial implications. But you're right, there's some nuance and certainly I would expect a committee to give answers and be respondent to questions from both the board, the select board, and the FinCom.
Your scope is a lot larger than what a finance committee is, but there's also that particular
Correct.
skills that they have that can help out.
And there's nothing to say that many of them may have the skills and would want to serve on this committee. There's nothing to prevent them from doing so. And
I mean, it's even possible, or at least theoretically, that they could have a subcommittee that just focused on capital needs
that's
and
another idea.
tied
Right?
it back in. It's just another alternative.
Right. Yeah.
Or we might,
But if we're not sure what capital planning means, it makes it very hard.
We got to figure out what we want, right?
we could also, in the end, set up a committee that had a representative from the FinCom.
Yes. Marlena, you had your hand raised. Did you want to say something? Let me get the microphone back to you.
Just a very quick question. I just want to make sure I understand and clarify. When I was at town meeting, I had asked about a building committee, municipal building committee. Is that the same or totally different than the capital planning committee? Because you just
This
said the
is
name
kind
of
of
it.
what is morphed out of that conversation.
Okay, so it is walking down that same
again,
road.
you see the challenges in
Yes,
trying to
I
write
see
up.
that. I'm confused.
Yes, because some people think, and there's disagreement amongst the board as, is it only buildings we should be worried about? Should we worry about lots that don't have buildings on them? Should we worry about a piece of equipment like the ladder truck, which is $1 million piece of equipment, right? So I think there's some, again, if you just say municipal buildings, you've tightened the envelope too tight, and that's the problem we keep finding ourselves in. We keep trying to identify
I'm not
the
sure
solution
that's what she
without
was
understanding the
asking.
problem.
Were you asking about a permanent building committee?
Yes, someone who can manage
The
or oversee
construction
multiple
projects.
different construction projects that are gonna be going on, maybe
Right.
simultaneously, maybe down the line, that can forecast, you're gonna have the taxes, these are gonna be affected by Flow Road Senior Center garage. What's it gonna look like, that sort of thing.
So, if I,
Go ahead, yeah,
um,
please.
I think they're very different, and while I'm strongly in favor of having a capital planning of some, or I don't want to call it that until we figure it out, but a planning committee about how we spend our money on capital projects. However, I do not think that a permanent building committee is a particularly good idea, because just the example tonight, we appointed a committee for the highway department garage and chose people, including somebody who manages the highway department. And if we're going to be building, a senior center, we would want people with expertise in different areas. So I don't think a permanent standing building committee is particularly useful for us.
I think that you get what you want. I think there's two realities here, and I agree with the way, and the discussion did go that path, that we decided that we wanted standing committees, specialized committees for certain big projects. You're talking about let's in the future, and we're talking about, hey, we've got a project approved. How do we move forward with it, right? And I think there's two different solutions here, and I think we're conflating things, and I think we should move forward. And I know that Ms. Manugian has an 8 o'clock that she'd like to depart
Roughly.
and become remote for, so I don't want to hold her up.
That's okay, I can give a few more minutes, but it's pretty close.
All right, so
So
sounds
keep
like
this on the agenda for future meetings, okay?
we need to bring this back at a
Alright.
different time.
We've
Well,
got it
could-
on our,
It's on our continuing
Yeah, but
issues list.
can maybe each of us submit some ideas about what should be the purview of this committee, so we can move
good-
forward?
I would love that. That would be very helpful to me. Thank you.
Don, have you got enough tape of us pontificating about what we view the committee as to try to compile that for us? Would that be something that'd be useful, that'd be able to do?
Yep.
I would appreciate that, thank you. So we'll do that, and then if you can send that around, then we can add to it, that'll save the redundancy factor.
I can go through so that we can adjourn
So
the
let's
meeting
do this,
without-
other business, burying ground gift acceptance, let's get that off the table for you.
Yeah, I'd ask the board to adopt a gift fund for the donation from the movie company for the old burying ground committee.
Need a motion for that, please?
Please,
I'm sorry, I'm confused about that wording. We have to adopt?
you have to accept the gift.
Accept the gift.
And
Accept the
establish
gift.
the gift fund, I'm sorry if I misspoke.
I move that we accept a gift from the,
Some source not yet.
No, $2,500.
the
That's an
$2,500
amount. Who do we say it's coming,
Gift.
who's making the gift?
It's the gift from the movie company
from the movie
The movie
company
company.
to the Old
to
Burying
the old burying ground
Ground
committee.
Committee.
Second.
Thank you.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
I heard that unanimous, thank you.
Senior Center building project update, Mr. Chairman, going well. They're pouring the slab tomorrow. The steel is in the process of being fabricated, should be delivered in a couple of weeks, so that project is going very, very well. Again, initiative planning is off the table until Josh comes back. Charter approval, I sent you out a notice letting you know where that stands. We're in pretty good shape there. The committee charge on capital planning we talked about already. Route 119 sidewalk, I have no update. I have no update on Florence Roach. I have no update on the task force. No update on the library roof repair. Highway garage renovations, now that the building committee has been appointed, I'm gonna go forward with the, choosing an architect and a clerk of the works, on the project and an OPM, working with them. The Pepperell landfill, I have no update there, and the OPEB funding into the operating budget, we're still working on that, so that's all I have on those items.
We're waiting on the OPEB funding to get a
Correct.
from town council, correct?
Yep.
Okay. John?
I have a question on the Route 119 sidewalk
Yes.
installation.
Yes,
It is creeping along
Yeah, I know.
very, very, very slowly.
I know.
I don't know what's holding it back, and I don't wanna see it left open the way it is during, when we're plowing snow and so forth. They seem to have just one truck and 3 guys. Today they had an excavator, but there's so much that still could be done that isn't getting done.
I'll talk to Tom and I'll get a status update.
And related
need
to.
We don't plow that section of the road, by the way, Mass Highway does.
All the more,
Even
Yeah.
worse.
I'm
all
just-
the
I
more
just wanna-
concern.
No, I
But
just
our
wanna make sure.
people wanna walk
I
down the
understand that,
street.
I understand that. I didn't wanna have anybody
Right.
worry about our highway guys.
Right.
Can I follow up on sidewalks? The new crosswalks seem to be great. Some of them I have seen flashing incorrectly. My question is, if people observe that, who is in charge of regulating those?
I think, I have to ask Tom Delaney, I believe he is responsible for that, but let me find out.
Okay.
Yeah, you're never gonna get those 100% on.
Well, I think the ones that, when they first went up, they were fluky and they got fixed. And so that's why these are new ones, and I'm sure they can get fixed.
We have 2 questions from the public, so I don't know where they fit, but we'll allow them under these options. Marlene, you had your hand up first. Judy, do you mind passing? Thank you very much.
Flower project, they're going to be voting on that to invite us into the feasibility study. Hopefully it will be a yes in December. We don't have the date yet. It'll probably be the week of December 12th. As soon as we know, town
we're on-
manager will know, and then you will know from
So
town
we're on hold
manager.
until they take that vote.
We're on hold. There was definitely some discussions, some pushback and forth on enrollment, and which will drive the size of an addition or new school. We did get some information about, they were very interested in about 40B. Am I got that right, Mark?
Yep.
Yeah, 40B in the percentage that we currently have in our towns, both towns, and how much room there is to build, because they see that that does increase enrollment. So we have, I believe it was 5.4 currently in Groton,
Yes.
and 0 in Dunstable. So we got lots of growing room,
Apparently.
apparently. So anyway, that's the update. So the superintendent was pushing back in the most fiscal responsible manner.
Okay, thank you. Connie Sartini, you had a question or comment?
Yes, actually, when you were discussing the sidewalks and the plowing, who will be responsible? Will it be the town or the state for the sidewalk clearing?
I believe
Along-
those sidewalks will be our responsibility.
All sidewalks in town, okay.
I'll confirm that with Tom.
Just curious.
Absolutely.
Good question.
Thank you.
But if they don't get it finished, we'll be out there with shovels, because you won't be able to use the mechanical equipment on this stuff.
That's a good point.
Well, plus some of them have mailboxes and utility poles in the middle of them right now.
That's right.
Okay, any select board liaison reports? We have no minutes, I'll adjourn us. Thank you.
Thank you.